This movie is based on a true story. It begins when a man named Sir John walks up to a young girl named Belle, who stares at him in disinterest. He tells her he is here to take her to the good life that she is born to live in. They soon bond, and she follows him outside. While on the way, Sir John gets some odd stares as he carries Belle in his arms to his carriage. When he gets to his mansion, Sir John tells his family members to take care of Belle, who is his daughter, while he heads out on a voyage ordered by the king. But they all protest against it because of her skin color. Before he leaves, Sir John tells Belle that he won't be able to take her on the voyage and assures her that he loves her just as much as he loved her late mother. While on a walk, Elizabeth asks about Belle's color, and Mary cautions that she'll turn into a lonely maid if she keeps asking terrible questions, and Elizabeth asks if that is why Mary turned out as she did. While Belle is alone, Lord Mansfield, who is the Chief Justice, shows her the portraits of her uncle Sir David Murray, who is Elizabeth's father and heir to his properties. Later, Lord Mansfield tells Lady Mansfield that Sir John had discovered her mother on a captured slave ship. Lady Mansfield asks what they'll tell people about Belle's color and if she'll be allowed to marry. When Lord Mansfield mentions that marrying people of her color will bring shame to the family, Lady Mansfield asks who will take care of Belle when they are gone. Years later, when the girls have grown up, Lord Mansfield reluctantly announces the death of Sir John. At night, Elizabeth learns that Sir John left Belle a vast inheritance. On the other hand, Elizabeth's own father has agreed with his new wife to leave Elizabeth nothing. Elizabeth is a little envious of Belle's inheritance as Belle doesn't have to worry about who she marries. Moments later, Mary announces that they'll be expecting visitors, but tells Belle that she won't be dining with them, as the rules of segregation have been going on for a while now. Belle later asks Lord Mansfield why she can't eat at the dinner table when guests are around, and Lord Mansfield informs her that they can't impose their disregard for general formalities on their guests. When she insists, he tells her he wishes it were that simple. Later, Elizabeth tells Mary she'll be staying with Belle during dinner, but changes her mind when Mary announces that there will be young gentlemen there. At dinner, Lady Ashford asks Lord Mansfield why he's taking so long on the judgment of the Zong case, but Lord Mansfield tells her the law takes a while, especially when regarding the lives of many people. Meanwhile, Elizabeth seductively whispers some French words in the ears of one of Lady Ashford's sons, James. Outside, Belle is startled by an intruder and runs inside. She later finds out that she has mistaken the son of their Reverend, Davinier, for an intruder. Davinier had come to deliver a letter to Lord Mansfield. Davinier tries to apologize, but Belle doesn't listen to him. After dinner, Lady Ashford condescendingly talks about Belle with her two sons, James and Oliver. Later, Elizabeth whispers to Belle that James is the eldest and heir to his family's properties. Meanwhile, James tells Oliver that he is repulsed by Belle and says her kind is only good to taste while on the cotton fields, while Elizabeth will make a good wife. Soon after, Oliver and Belle lock eyes. Noticing this, Lady Ashford warns Oliver against getting involved with Belle. Oliver simply tells her that he has his eye out for the fortune Belle's father left her, and this interests Lady Ashford. Sometime later, Belle learns that the family is making a portrait of her and Elizabeth, and goes to confront Lord Mansfield about it. She finds Davinier inside the office and gets into an argument with him again. Before she leaves, Belle listens to Davinier express his desire to become a lawmaker. Lord Mansfield informs him that he only has the rank and income to become a country lawyer, but Davinier expresses that neither did Lord Mansfield in his early days. Lord Mansfield informs Belle that Reverend Davinier has asked him to take Davinier under his tutelage. When they are outside the office, Belle asks Davinier about the Zong case, and he tells her it's a human cargo ship where the captain ordered the crews to drown the slaves. When Davinier asks why she doesn't dine with her family, she angrily reminds him of his place, and Davinier leaves in anger. At night, Belle cries as she watches herself in the mirror, almost mad at her own skin color for being born that way. Sometime later, Davinier asks Lord Mansfield how he is handling the pressure of making his ruling about the Zong case, which could change the economic course of England through the slave trade. Lord Mansfield simply informs him of the rule of letting justice reign, though heaven may fall. Davinier reminds him that the case was made on the claim that there was not enough water to serve the crew and the slaves, and he wonders why human life was ever regarded as cargo. Unfortunately, Lord Mansfield sides with the side of slaves being cargo. Nearby, the ladies talk about Davinier, who is engaged. When Davinier walks by them, Belle avoids his gaze. When Belle is being painted for the portrait, Davinier stares at her. When she spots him, he tries to leave, but she tells him to stay and talk with her. She probes him further about the Zong case, and after he realizes she's really concerned, he tells her he believes the slaves were diseased and were drowned by the captain so they can be considered for insurance. Moments later, Lord Mansfield confronts Davinier for revealing such matters to Belle. He tells Davinier that as her guardian, he decides when to reveal such information to her, not the son of a clergyman, and Davinier leaves in anger. Before he leaves, he asks Lord Mansfield if Belle is worth more or less than the £30 of insurance the traders are asking for every life lost. Lord Mansfield warns him against ever being in Belle's vicinity. Later, Lady Mansfield and Lord Mansfield speak separately to Elizabeth and Belle about going to London to find a marriage match. Lady Mansfield tells Elizabeth that Belle won't be attending with them because men of high rank won't want her. Meanwhile, Lord Mansfield tells Belle that Elizabeth will be the only one attending because she needs a man since she doesn't have an inheritance. On their way to London, Elizabeth speaks about her hopes of finding James there and falling in love, but Belle warns her that such love yields poverty or a broken heart. Later, Elizabeth speaks to Belle about how she is only the property of the man she marries, as women usually have no inheritance and are forbidden to work. When they get to a hotel, Belle avoids the service of a dark-skinned maid named Mabel, but later agrees when Mabel helps her after finding her struggling with combing her hair. When they get to the Ashford home, James has fun with Elizabeth. Oliver asks Belle to take some air with him, and James bluntly asks him if he's not worried about what people will say. When Elizabeth challenges him about what he meant by that, he blurts out that Oliver hasn't done the proper introductions, even though he's actually referring to Belle's skin. That night, Lady Ashford speaks with the ladies about the chance of Belle and Oliver being a match. Meanwhile, Oliver goes to privately speak with Belle. He informs her that James doesn't like her because Belle's mom is black, but says her father has offered her privileges. He even refers to her white father as the better half. Belle is taken aback by this racist statement. Later, Elizabeth informs James that she hopes he will seal his attention by ordering introductions with her family, to which he agrees. Belle spots Davinier in the crowd and goes to apologize to him for making him lose his tutelage. He soon drags her away so Lord Mansfield doesn't see them together, and Elizabeth sees him with his hands around her waist. They both share an intimate moment until they untangle. Belle speaks to him about the Zong case, and he reveals to her his intentions to change the law that allows this injustice and barbarianism. Belle also shows him that it is shameful that a law would uphold a financial transaction over an injustice. They are both dumbstruck by each other's words and reluctantly say goodbye. Before she leaves, Davinier tells her where to find him. Meanwhile, Lady Ashford learns that Elizabeth won't be inheriting a penny from her father. She goes to inform James, who is worried that her lack of money will hinder his political ambitions. At the hotel, Belle raises the topic of the fraud in the Zong case to incite Lord Mansfield, but Lady Mansfield tells her to stop since it's a vulgar topic during breakfast. Later, Lord Ashford infers to Lord Mansfield that his adoption of Belle may colour his judgments towards the Zong slave trade case, but Lord Mansfield assures him that there are laws that they live by, and if the law supports the slave traders, the insurance company will be forced to pay. Lord Ashford later informs Lord Mansfield of his wish to seal the Mansfield and Ashford names. Moments later, Oliver comes to the Mansfield home to propose to Belle, and she agrees. Elizabeth walks in on the engagement and is surprised. At night, Elizabeth asks Belle if there is any message from the Ashfords for her, but Belle says there is none. But it won't be long. She asks Belle what it feels like to be engaged, and Belle says it feels perfect. The next day, Belle thanks Lord Mansfield. Lady Mansfield tells Elizabeth that they have to proceed to make acquaintances with other eligible gentlemen. Elizabeth asks to wait a while for Mr. James, but Mary advises her to never wait for a manual. Belle asks to be excused and heads to the library to go through Lord Mansfield's book. She heads outside and asks the coach rider Harry to take her somewhere. At the destination, Harry heads in to find Davinier, who is speaking with other men about going against the slave traders' defense. In the coach, Belle hands Davinier some evidence that shows the ship had passed across 8 ports, and the captain never took the initiative to replenish the ship with water. She asks him to reveal the information to others, but he explains how this will set Lord Mansfield against her. They secretly go for a walk, and Belle speaks about how many privileges she's been given considering she is a dark-skinned woman in these times. Davinier mentions that Belle should marry a true equal who respects her. She mentions how he reminds her of her father, and he tells her she is very beautiful. The air gets electric, and she informs him about her engagement. He asks her if it's what she wants, and she tells him Lord Mansfield said she's lucky a man would even marry her considering her rank in society. He tells her she is more than reducing herself for the sake of rank, and only a true man would marry her without a rank or penny to her name. At an event, Lady Mansfield and Elizabeth go around looking for suitable matches, and Lady Mansfield avoids the men with several elder siblings who have a stronger right to the inheritance. A young, wealthy man named Vaughan approaches them and asks for Lady Mansfield's permission to visit Elizabeth at their home. Moments later, James wonders if Belle will be able to dine with Oliver when they get married. He tells her he no longer needs her broke as cousin. James manhandles her and presses his fingers on her lips, then grabs her privates. Belle feels violated. Then James tells Oliver that marrying Belle will destroy their family. In the evening, Belle and Davinier go on a walk, and he informs her that he and his fiancée were forced together, and they don't like each other. Harry wearily continues to help Belle go see Davinier. On one occasion, they speak about how Lord Mansfield's ruling could shake the foundations of England's slave laws, but would make him a lot of enemies. Elizabeth sadly tells Belle that James has not reached out to her. Belle promises to give some of her inheritance as her dowry to help her find a good husband, and Elizabeth hurries to tell her mother to write to the Ashford family to inform James of her newfound riches. Belle tries to warn her that James touched her inappropriately. Elizabeth calls her a liar and says that James would never touch her since she is beneath him. When Belle demands to know why she is beneath him, Elizabeth declares that she is illegitimate. Belle angrily declares that her father regarded her as a daughter, but Elizabeth's father refuses to legitimize her position, and that is why she is Poe, which makes Elizabeth leave. Moments later, Belle goes to see Davinier, and Lord Mansfield follows her. When Davinier enters the coach, he gets into an argument with Lord Mansfield about his quickness to sum people up as either low or high class and declares his love for Belle, which shocks her. Later that day, Lord Mansfield complains to Lady Mansfield about Davinier's radical nature and self-righteous behavior. Lady Mansfield mentions that he was once like that, with a desire to change the world. She asks him if he loves Belle, and he tells her he does, as if she were his daughter and would not see her diminished. Elizabeth later learns that James has chosen someone else, and she cries on Belle's shoulder. That night, Elizabeth reveals to Belle that she had seen her with Davinier and encouraged her to go with the man she loves. Later, the Lord and Lady Mansfield tell Lady Ashford and Oliver that Belle has refused to be matched with Oliver. They soon condescendingly ask why a black-skinned girl would turn down their family. Belle answers them by saying she will never consider getting married to a family that would regard her skin color as a shame or as a sin to be forgiven. Soon after, Lord Mansfield reveals the portrait image of Elizabeth and Belle, but she isn't kneeling, like the other portraits drawn. Belle asks Lord Mansfield if he would have returned her to the slums if the rule that allowed him to take her in didn't exist. She speaks to him about how she knows him to be courageous to break rules when it matters, and she is evidence of that. At court, Lord Mansfield listens to Davinier speak about how the law should not encourage barbaric frameworks for crime in the name of law. Before Lord Mansfield leaves, Davinier tells him that if he files for the traders, he would leave Belle in a world where she is worth more dead than alive. Lord Mansfield simply tells him he must learn to control his emotions to prevent matters of law and love from devastating him. Soon, the day of Lord Mansfield's final ruling arrives. Meanwhile, Mr. Vaughan comes to the Mansfield home to see Elizabeth, and Belle cheers her on. Belle later convinces Harry to take her to court, despite his protest. At court, Lord Mansfield discloses that it is legal for the crew members to jettison the slaves due to the low water supply. But that wasn't what happened. He explains that the crew members had chosen a ship that caused the slaves to be diseased, and that they disposed of them because they wouldn't have been insured for the loss of goods if they died. He also claims that slavery is a repulsive position and should not be supported, as he looks at Belle, who is now crying. Belle soon goes to hug Davinier. Outside, Lord Mansfield reminds Belle that his decision for her to marry a gentleman still stands and offers Davinier a job with him to make him a gentleman. In the closing scene, Belle declares her love for Davinier as they both share a kiss in broad daylight. Apparently, the real painting of Belle and Elizabeth is at Scone Palace to this very day. I'm glad Lord Mansfield finally grew some balls.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.